Welcome to the weekend must watch on Intercut, the weekly show going through the movies, TV, and entertainment that people just can't cut away from. This week in movies, we have a lot of stuff in store. We have a duo of teacher films, starting off with the Holdovers, that I think we both are really hoping is going to get a lot of awards love, especially come the Oscars. We have Radical, that won the big Sundance Audience Award at the beginning of the year and had people crying at my screening, like we were like on the next wave of COVID. There's also Fingernails from Apple TV Plus that was asking if you would give yours to find out who your true love is after you get close enough for your true love to also give their fingernail. You also had Quiz Lady, which interestingly enough is now considered the true fake story, whereas NYAD is considered the fake true story. We have
There you
a
go.
lot of movies in store today. I'm your co-host Arturo Zurita. Joining me as always is my other co-host Zachary Shevich. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be back talking movies. Anything big in your movie life? Any big changes?
I did. I had to add something else to the collection because, as if there isn't already enough posters all around this place.
Hmm.
But after going to the theater to go catch the Holdovers in Radical, on my second viewing, I was walking out of the theater and I noticed that they were tossing some stuff away, and
Ooh,
and tossing certain things away. You
right
know,
place, right time.
there's no reason to have things go to waste when you can have a major motion picture poster board right there at your convenience to add to the set.
Ah,
But
lucky man.
but I can't take only one for me when I can get one for my
Oh,
boy.
baby. Oh, that's so sweet. I love that.
A couple fell from the truck, my man. So of course, for the Holdovers, one of the better movies of the year. Zach has been hyping this bad boy up ever since he saw it out of Toronto.
Yeah.
So the moment that I caught one, I was like, "Oh, that looks kind of nice right there. Let me see." They just throw these things away, bro. They don't care. They'll be throwing
Right.
popcorn. They'll be throwing hot dogs. They'll be throwing everything. They'll be throwing some of these screenings away. No one's in there watching these movies. So of course, got you, dude.
Thank you so much. Obviously the movie theaters just don't keep movie sickos like us in mind when they throw these valuable pieces of memorabilia away. I'm always like tempted to go up to find some manager and be like, "Are you doing anything with that poster in
You
two
know the
weeks?"
you know the worst part, and I can't even remember what the poster was, but it was a pretty big movie at a local
Hmm.
theater that we had, and that thing like flew away. And the guy who was running it, you could just tell that nobody liked him. But I went up to him and I told him like, "Yo, just so you know, whatever they would call it, not the marquee, but where they hold the posters." I was like, "That thing's wide open. The poster flew away." And I brought it in. He goes, "Oh yeah, we're changing those out." And I'm holding it. I'm like, well, "Can I keep it?" No. And he grabbed it and he took it to the back just to throw it in the trash. And I think of that movie that we covered off of the film festivals, Pictures of Ghosts. He's got that one scene where he mentioned that they were gonna burn all the posters, and he went in and was getting like the craziest copies of it. So,
Hmm.
hey, I got you right here, bro.
Thank you.
Holdovers, one of the best movies. I don't know how. I was like thinking about the logistics of like taking it to Sundance for you to take it on the plane back. Hey,
We'll figure
sometimes
it
it takes
out.
us months, right? But we ended up getting the South by posters to Amanda. It
Exactly.
works out in some way. The important part is getting it. The important
Yes.
part is just securing it. But yeah, had to for one of the best movies. One of the best movies of the year, one of the best performances for sure. Now that I've caught it,
Yeah.
Zach caught it earlier. But before we get into that, what about you? Any posters that fell off the truck?
No miraculous new additions to my
uh,
memorabilia this week,
well,
unfortunately. What I
kinda,
did,
kinda, kinda.
yeah, not personally, just via surrogate or whatever. But the thing I did add to my collection was an updated library card. It's been a little while since I went to my local
Okay.
library, and I refreshed it. And man, sometimes you forget, and then you reacquaint yourself with all the things that are free and available to us through public funding. It's pretty
Where the
nice
taxes go.
to, yeah, I mean, not just like not just like the books that obviously you can check out from your local library or whatever, but it's also the access to all the different services that they've added in order to keep up with modern times. Like we frequently shout out Hoopla or Canopy, where you can stream lots of movies. Part of the reason why I reactivated my library card is to rewatch the Roger Ebert documentary, which is currently on Hoopla.
Oh,
Yeah,
life
so
itself.
yeah, life itself, exactly. So rather than spending the $4 to rent it on Amazon or Apple or
Hell
whatever,
yeah,
my local library is going to give me some access for free. Also,
beautiful.
you and I, we like to do our research and sometimes read or listen to audiobooks of stuff like Killers of the Flower Moon, or I'm working my way through Poor Things with that film coming up. They have their own audiobook service where you can rent audiobooks. So rather
Yep.
than paying Audible obscene amounts per month, you can get the audiobook again for free. So man, it's nice to have the library system. I feel like people just always overlook and forget about them.
Yeah, dude. But when I wasn't in the city and I was back home, because I've
Hmm.
not gotten my city one, I've never really gotten there. But I even went there and like half the stuff is like missing. You end up having to do Hoopla anyway. But
Yeah.
back home, I would like ask for a movie and they'd get the Criterion version there. I'm like, oh baby, I'm
Yeah,
home, and then no one's renting them. You know,
that's the
the kids were
thing.
just getting the PS4 games. But I'd be like, yo, can I get this like crazy movie foreign film? And they'd order it and it'd be there. And it's like in my backyard. I would just go rent it.
Exactly.
Please take advantage of it. It's something we've
Yeah.
always talked about. And Hoopla, dude.
People
I
like
was
sorry,
Zone
you
of
go.
Interest being on there. Oh,
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's so easy.
Exactly. And people like us often lament the death of the rental store, Blockbusters and stuff like
Still
that,
there.
or the family store. The library might even be better because they can, if there's something they're missing, they can request it from a different library. You
Yes,
got it,
sir.
hopefully within a couple
That
of
too.
weeks.
Yeah. It's like a
Yeah.
connection of libraries that all work in tandem. Yeah, we do not give it enough credit, but you get to catch a lot of good things there. And if it wasn't for the library, I wouldn't have gotten a lot of my film education when it came to a lot of the movies, the international cinema, a lot of older films and the such. And especially with the audiobooks, I think that's been a really big help. Right now, Alina's going through all of the books for the Hunger Games. So she's reading them, and then I'm listening to the audiobook. So she's trying to keep up with my two times
Nice.
speed of the audiobook in that way. But no, it's perfect, and like we said, it's free. You know.
Yeah. Can't be free.
Yeah. But let's get into some of the movies of
Let's
this
do it.
week because we have a pretty good stack of movies. You know, we're entering November. I think it's gonna be nothing but hits. I'm looking at my calendar, even the ones that I'm not too excited for still look pretty interesting, and especially towards like that Thanksgiving era, there is too many films coming out back to back to back. Dude, I had like 5 movies. I'm just gonna name them right here. I was like, dang, they're gonna be releasing that new Trolls movie, the new Saltburn movie. Next Go Wins, Thanksgiving, May December. How did I have Hunger Games as the 7th movie?
Yeah, this is the time of year where it really starts to get busy for us, which is so
Oh.
crazy because it feels like there's, maybe couple months there from August, September, maybe even into October where you're really just reaching for stuff,
Yeah.
scraping the bottom of that barrel.
The weekend
Uh,
must
we're-
watch anything else but movies. But yeah, there's actually
Not
some
anymore.
good stuff. Nah,
Yeah.
we got a couple of good releases this week, so let's get into them. Starting off with what Zach, Karsten, Amanda, Caitlin saw it too, right? Jeff,
Yeah, Caitlin liked it a lot.
The Holdovers. Everyone was telling me, yo, this is the movie you need to catch out of Toronto. I don't know if it played New York, but it might as well have
No.
kind of with the tangential screenings that they had.
Yeah.
Dude, break down The Holdovers for me again. I finally had the chance to watch it, and it is a standout.
Yeah, so The Holdovers, the latest movie from Alexander Payne, which features a group of students who attend a New England boarding school but are unable to go back to their families over the holidays, and thus they are held over. They are the holdovers who are forced to live on campus over the holiday break with their curmudgeonly professor, played by Paul Giamatti, who's doing, his best grumpy old man, kind of really perfectly suited for a role like that. And it's, about the time they spend together over the holidays, including with the school's head lunch lady, Mary, played by Divine Joy Randolph, another great
Excellent.
actor. And ultimately it becomes this story of these outcasts coming together, played by Giamatti, Randolph, and the newcomer Dominic Sessa, who is the one who is prominently featured in the trailers if you've seen it, who is also a newcomer. Interestingly enough, he was
Yeah.
a student at one of the boarding schools that they filmed at, and while doing their prep for the project, they ended up auditioning him and casting him in the role. So it's got great performances all around. It's so nice to see Paul Giamatti in particular back in this type of mode. I was really sick of seeing my guy play Benjamin Franklin in Verizon commercials when he's like probably one of the great American character actors. He's so perfectly suited to a role like this. Obviously, he's had a lot of collaborations with Alexander Payne in the past with stuff like Sideways. But to me, it was really Divine Joy Randolph who's the beating heart of the film. It's a movie that's very funny, but it's also got this real warmth to it, and a lot of that I think is through her performance, her just sort of like her passive acceptance of the sort of inanity she has to deal with as people around her sort of act immaturely. She's sort of takes everything in stride and remains level-headed, and just able to add some rational words of wisdom. I really, really loved her here. I really loved this movie. It's just a pleasant joyful holiday type film. But
Yeah.
I've already said all that. I'm curious, and I think we're going to get into this more in a longer review of Holdovers later. But what did you think about the movie?
One, I don't mean to disappoint you, Zach, but is it bad that when I do see the great actor, the great American
Yes.
actor Paul Giamatti, um, I see him covered in blue and big fat lie.
Even then, it's still like
What a
using his
performance.
talents. He's
Honestly,
a
truly.
really great foil. Yeah.
If you really look in there, with Frankie Muniz as his co-star, I think you get a lot of his great
Yeah.
performances there. No,
Comedian icon Amanda Bynes.
look, it's a standout in the sense that I know this was a movie that was really trying to replicate the 70s, and that commercial, the trailer for it, I think really gets you in the zone of that. I think
Yeah.
the movie itself, it doesn't make it that much of a distraction. I think a lot of the audio techniques were really amped up for the trailer compared, because I ended up watching it in the same theater that I also was watching the trailer in a lot, and I think the audio isn't as in your face. It reminded me a lot of the Skinamarink trailer, where it's a lot scarier and the atmosphere is like amped up a lot, and then when you watch the movie, it's more subdued. But I
Yeah.
think that's a good thing, because I think it may have been a little distracting for people, like listening to that echo of what would have, been
It's
it
got that kind
imitating
of like tinny sort of sound that a lot of films from maybe the 70s or
70s.
80s
Yeah.
had. Yeah.
But no, yeah, like you said, the performances all around. I think Paul Giamatti is a standout for this. He had mentioned that he was going to have Paul in it regardless, and that's why the guy's name is Paul in the movie. Divine Joan Randolph, she's the heart of the film. Without her, like, dude, the first little bit of the movie, it wasn't bad. I was just like, I don't care for these kids as much.
Mhm.
They're a little snooty. I was like, is this just going to be them going through the motions of it? And they don't want to be there at school. Obviously, you end up developing with them, but it's her character that really puts you in there. Just the double entendre of the title being not just them being held over, but how they're all kind of held over from different aspects of their life that they just can't move past from. I thought it was
Right.
really good. Dominic was good,
Yeah.
but I'm sorry he was surrounded by juggernauts for a first timer.
Yeah,
There were
I
some
mean-
scenes. He came off like a spoiled brat, but I guess that was kind of the point, right?
Yeah, look, he fits the role really well. I
Yeah.
think there's some people who they see a performance like this and they react like we found our next great young American actor, and it's like I'm not
Yeah.
sure this guy is going to be Timothy Chalamet or something, but
Nah.
he's very good in this role.
He's
You
good
know,
for
I-
what it needs it to be.
he is a fresh out of high school kind of like bratty teenager, and he plays a graduating kind of guy, fresh out of
Mhm.
high school, bratty teenager. I don't know. It's not necessarily something that I think he had to stretch much for,
Mhm.
but he's very good in it.
Yeah. No, overall, I would recommend it. That second half of the movie was so strong, dude. This is a movie
Yep.
that progressively gets better as you watch it. It's definitely a standout. And I like how Josh is saying in the chat, shout out the chat, that it's a very cozy film. That it's definitely, this is that movie that as soon as you finish watching it, right now that we're in November, December, you just like love walking out into the snow. Like, this is my favorite time of movie season. It's just, yeah, it's fantastic. Highly recommend The Holdovers.
Josh also asked if we think this is Alexander Payne's best film or at least your favorite. I already answered this question back in our TIFF coverage. I still prefer both Election and Citizen Ruth, a couple of his early comedies, to this
So I
one.
gotta watch, yeah.
But it's certainly up there. I'd put it on the same level as Sideways. Personally, I like this one a little more than Sideways, just because maybe I connect more with the characters here.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to rewatch these two, Election and Sideways. Like, I feel these were two that if I did see them, it was so long ago. I can't
Right.
count them in my like modern age of having seen movies. I do think it's better than Nebraska. Anything is better than Downsizing. The trailer was better than Downsizing. I wasn't the biggest fan of Descendants, so
Me either.
yeah, I would say it's definitely at the top ones, top three for sure. And then after I watch these, I'll be able to tell you where they would fall in line. But I was asking Zach about his like older movies because I did not realize. Oh, this man made Inside Out, the different Inside Out. There's Inside Out, Inside Out 2, and Inside Out 3 that this man was directing. Starring off in, I was gonna call them erotica, but right here they say they're softcore anthology films.
We can say they're more anatomically focused movies.
Yeah. So the next time someone tells you that your little short film, you started off in the rubble, how are you gonna make it up the ranks? I mean, look at Alexander Payne. No one bats an eye when a new movie comes out from him. He really turned his career inside out. So, yeah, shout out him. Holdover is definitely one of the best ones, especially very late in his career. This is a dude who like takes forever to release a movie, which I was like looking at that.
It's been a little while.
This man will drag like 10 years. That stretch between Nebraska, he was just making like short films or commercials. Like, good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Holdovers, a very good movie out in theaters right now. I would highly recommend it. Another one that came out of the Sundance Film Festival, also about a teacher struggling with their kids, but here it's more so the teacher trying to shape the kids as much as it was the student changing the teacher. Radical, it is based off of a true story. There's a whole article about it. I haven't caught that yet. But I am working on a video for this and Holdovers kind of combined. And this is a movie that comes from Mexico. It's from Eugenio's own production company. It's about this teacher who decides to go teach in Juarez after an incident that they don't really get too much into. I'm curious if the article does. Where all of these students, like, they are going to class and there are gunshots outside of their building. They get into school, and if you're late, you won't be let in because they will bar the doors. When people go home from school, they're seeing bodies on the floor, and it's like freedom riders in Mexico, which just like amps it up just a little bit more.
In the heart of like cartel land,
literally,
particularly.
I enjoyed the movie. It is definitely a standard movie when it comes to, like we were mentioning, Freedom Writers. There's a movie that what's his name just came out with, Critical Thinking or Critical Role. What's his name? I'm blanking on him. I can't remember, but it's like Critical Role. Sure. It was pretty much they were going through statistics. The Teacher from Argentina just came out not too long ago. Another similar movie of this type. But what I really liked about this one is the energy that he brings to the performance, specifically because he's a teacher who's helping elementary school kids not even learn, just to care. Like, a bunch of these students just do not think that they're going to make it to like the next day, much less the next year when it comes to their education, because they're either going to have to stay home to take care of siblings that they didn't know they were going to have. Some of them are already like they're already in a gang that they didn't even realize the initiation already happened. And he brings in this type of very bombastic character who wants to make it fun, who just wants to have that curiosity in them. And I've told you multiple times, I think that we're in this era of like nobody learns anything unless they're dunking on another person. And this is a movie that's showing learning up on screen, and that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to like have that trial and error to be able to come up with a conclusion that you can come up with yourself. A lot of the people in my theater were crying. I took my mom to go see this one, and she was very cold-hearted. She was just like, it wasn't the saddest movie. They're hyping it up too much. It is obviously being hyped up, I think, a little too much. With it winning the audience award winner at Sundance, and with it getting its rollout right now. Yeah. But I don't think it takes away from it being a very heartwarming story, especially because it's a true one. And I would recommend it as a junior price, but definitely when it's a rental is where I would say catch it, because it really got me, especially towards some of the ending shots and moments that you get with the characters at the end.
Yeah. Look, like some of the inside baseball when it comes to these film festivals and the movies that win the audience award prizes is that they're not awarding the most challenging or upsetting films audience awards. Zone of Interest, Killers of the Flower Moon, movies that are very like downtrodden or leave you with an unhappy ending, Uncut Gems and stuff like that. Those aren't the movies that are winning audience awards. It's films that kind of leave you with a smile or leave you kind of feeling lifted. And even if they are addressing real things, as we've seen, like Toronto gave like Jojo Rabbit the audience award once upon a time, or American Fiction got it this year too. They can address real things, but they kind of do it in a way that makes it very palatable. Yeah. And like that's what you get here. Like it's a film that is very much like aware of real issues and addressing them, but it's ultimately like packaged in a way that makes Eugenio Derbez really charming and is a good showcase for his talents, both comedically and dramatic. And it plays into like a very satisfying film arc, the stand and deliver type of movie. So I think as long as you kind of know what you're going in for, you're going to be satisfied with it.
Yeah, no, right here, hit it on the dime. It's Coda. Like, this is a perfect Apple movie. This isn't even picked up by Apple yet, and I'm already assuming it's an Apple movie, Yeah. Again, another one where it's like, yeah, we enjoyed it, we liked it, everything that's in there. Bro, there's a point towards the end of the movie, right? I loved how he was teaching these kids, and then they're like, we got to do standardized testing. Like, those kids, every single one failed. We just came out laughing. We're like, none of those kids learned anything that they needed to from
Right.
the syllabus. But there are really heartwarming moments in this. Some very heavy hitting moments as well. But yeah, I'd be curious to see more people's thoughts on this. I don't know where it ended up in the box office because Eugenio's like one of the very few international stars, especially coming out of Mexico, where like the instructions not included. I remember when we went to go catch that movie and I made a little review and my views started popping off. I'm like, what's going on? It had broke the top 5 of the box office and like nobody saw that coming. He then did it again with like Overboard. He had done it with a couple of other movies. I don't know where this is falling in the top 10. I didn't get to check the box office earlier, but for the screenings that I went to, they were pretty sold out. So I can see that a lot of people have been gravitating towards the movie. Hence why it won the audience one over at Sundance. But still a pretty decent movie between the two teaching ones that are out
Yeah,
this week.
I
in
think it
theaters.
ended up in 5th at the box office, which is like honestly not that bad considering
That's
like
top half.
yeah, it wasn't like a huge release. It
Wow.
didn't get a lot of like commercials or anything like that. Just sort of taking a quick look over at Box Office Mojo, it was only in 419 theaters compared to the 3,700 that
What?
Five Nights at Freddy's was at. So that's pretty respectable for
That's-
a movie like
dude,
this one.
That's crazy.
2.7 million first weekend.
We got to get Eugenio into the show, bro.
Especially like we're not going to talk about this, but there's the Meg Ryan romantic comedy
Yeah.
that came out this weekend. What Happens Later? I didn't get a chance to catch it. I don't think you did either. That one opened in more than 3 times as many theaters and made 1.2 million less.
Nobody wanted to know what happened later, I guess at that point. But yeah, no, I'm telling you, I know this guy. He just knows numbers and he knows his audience. I think that's the big thing. He knows what to give them. So, hey, shout out Eugenio. Moving into streaming, though, this was a movie that kind of had a limited run. It was at some film festivals. Zach got to see it in Toronto. So he kind of got me ready to be like, yo, this isn't Apples, which was his pick of the week last week. This is Fingernails. A movie, as we were saying earlier, about this test that can determine how much you love a person percentage-wise, I guess, but it won't tell you also who loves who.
It's like a compatibility test, but it's done by removing and testing your fingernails.
Your fingernails, but you can also like later on remove a fingernail years later and get a second test.
Yeah, it's like if you're in love with the person right now. It's not like a compatibility as much as it is like, how are you feeling right now if you can't figure it out for yourself?
I'm sorry, but that's like the Mean Girls meme. I think there's 50% chance that it's already raining. Like,
Right.
that was ridiculous. Great cast. Jessie Buckley. Always fantastic in everything that she's in. You could tell she's working with things that the movie's not even trying to address, especially when they got close-ups of her face. Riz Ahmed is good. I'm starting to wonder if like Riz Ahmed is always doing too much in the movies that he's in, and even Jeremy Allen White, one of the most subdued ones. And I really felt every scene that he was in because this is a man who's just trying to work, just trying to get things done, and he's like questioning his partner who says she's going to get a job in teaching, but in reality she ends up keeping a lot of secrets from him, and he's always like not just questioning their relationship, but like questioning like what are they both bringing into that household. Right off the bat, I just didn't believe the whole process of the fingernails. I thought it was the dumbest thing. We've been talking about this director being it's derogatory to say, what's his name, Junior?
Yorgos Lanthimos. Yeah.
He's worked with him.
He's worked with them. He's also a Greek director. Both of their films have this kind of wry approach to interrogating social structures.
There was a lot of sensibilities that they share.
Yeah.
And now it's being a little detrimental because Apples was something different. Fingernails feels like someone saw The Lobster and went, how can I make that a little bit more real? And while it is more real, I believe The Lobster, where you're going to turn into a freaking animal if you don't find a partner, way more than I did this fingernails thing. Why does anyone believe in this? I didn't understand. There's so many mistakes this thing does. Like, even on the business perspective, when they're because it's one of the Owen brothers, if I'm not mistaken.
Luke Wilson, yeah.
Like, wouldn't his whole outlet be like, we don't want competitors? But he's like, no, these competitors are helping out. I said one of the Owen brothers. Yeah, Wilson brothers. They sound so much alike. There was one point where you just hear his voice, and I'm like, wow.
Loki?
Stop, bro. But like, for real, he's the one running this business, and Wouldn't it be in your best interest to like not have failures because then people won't want to believe in this? Severance, I think, is a world again another Apple show that really built out this universe and where you're like, okay, I can see why people are falling for this and how they were even able to build up this world with the tech company that it is, and even was showcasing people who like were against it and what may be building on the outside of the Severance world. Here it was like, yeah, I don't really agree with it. I'm like, yo, this is like shaping people's lives. This is the Rotten Tomatoes of love for people. I don't know. I just did not believe the process of
Yeah.
them putting this together, and I think that's why I couldn't follow along with it early on. Not
Yeah.
bad, just I did not fulfill it for me.
Josh in the live stream said, "Did you think the concept was confusing? I found some holes in the reasoning." I don't know if it's so much that it's confusing in that I think that the film sort of establishes some logic and then doesn't follow its own logic, right?
Yeah,
Like in Gremlins, they say you don't feed them after midnight. And it's a little bit like the movie was like, let's just feed them after midnight anyway. It might be more interesting.
yeah,
I think you either establish very sort of like strict rules for your world to be in, or you kind of have to abandon them because like what you're left with is sort of this like half in, half out, unsatisfying thing that doesn't really make sense. And like the fingernail aspect of it, like he said he was inspired by swiping on a phone, going on Tinder and using your fingernail essentially to say yes or no to different potential
Oh,
love
no
interests.
way.
It's an interesting idea, but like I just don't. I think the way that the movie actually handles the fingernail aspect of it is like not. It's not fully in. It doesn't like. I don't know if the movie knows what they want you to think about the fingernails, right?
Yeah. If you're going off of that, that's a good log line, that it's based off of the swiping. But at that point, just go see that Black Mirror episode. That got it down
Yeah.
pat in terms of really having it be something on your phone that deals with algorithms. Maybe it's because I'm just so anti algorithms that I didn't understand why people were like, I don't know, for this. They built something where it's supposed to spawn these really intimate moments with people. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And because I couldn't believe it, I couldn't believe their intimate moments. I feel that they would have been questioning it in so many ways. There's one scene where the machine messes up, right? And they like zoom out and it's a gay couple and I'm like, wow, hey, what are they doing in this movie? And they just never got into pockets of like even in the test, they do these like almost trust falls and like sniffing and zapping yourself to really make yourself be conditioned
Yeah.
to loving the person, feeling pain when they're gone. And I'm like, this is getting into a completely different territory than even a compatibility test.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it felt like it wanted to be multiple things at once. And I don't know, it really
Yeah.
stinks.
And some of that stuff in particular, I thought was really interesting and funny, and sort of like they're trying to almost like instill Pavlovian responses of love
Yeah.
in people. Like that is really cool. But then it sort of stays there for a while. I found myself really enjoying this one, and then just enjoying it less and less until I felt like I didn't enjoy it at all. And I don't
Yeah.
know if you agree with me in that there's like a couple moments where it really feels like they could have just ended the movie like 30 minutes earlier, 15 minutes earlier, 5 minutes earlier, and it would have essentially felt like the same thing.
Yeah, you guys had told me this early on, and I was just like, man, I maybe there could be more. I had seen the trailer last week, and I was like, oh, this is an interesting trailer. It's giving me a little bit more of the world, and I could not. It looks pretty. I don't know what they shot it in, but there was a lot of like film grain that would just pop up on the screen digitally. But I just wanted it to be more. I'm curious to know people's thoughts on Fingernails. It's playing over on Apple TV Plus.
Yeah.
Not a bad movie. Just
Still interested in what Christos Nikou wants to do next.
yeah, we're like 60% on like compatibility if we were to to mesh it there. But continuing more on the streaming side of things, Quiz Lady was another movie that you caught over at Toronto, and you said it was
Yeah.
a very fun experience. I know that they were premiering it there, readying it for their Hulu premiere because this is one of those Fox movies that could have been in theaters if they wanted to. And now they're like really big releases for Hulu. Like,
Yeah.
shout out Apple for sure. They've got some of the best movies coming out, but they're doing the theatrical. Hulu really is releasing like massive movies that would play for a month in theaters, and you're getting them in the comfort of your own home.
Mm-hmm.
Quiz Lady wasn't that bad, dude. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
It's pretty much as soon as Alina and I like to write notes when we're watching a movie, and this movie begins with this little girl just watching what is practically Jeopardy, this quiz show that she grew up when all this turmoil was happening around her, and as she grows up, she's like answering everything, and it's leading to her maybe being on the show, and they kind of give you this whole crazy reason for why she needs to be on the show. But we both wrote down, White Men Can't Jump. If you remember that scene with
Yeah.
Rosie Perez,
Which they cut that storyline out of the remake.
yes, we don't need to bring up the remake from what Jack Harlow did, but no, this was a really fun movie, and
Yeah.
you had described it as them kind of swapping out the roles, with Aquafina playing the more subdued Sandra Oh role, and then Sandra Oh playing this like bombastic Aquafina role.
Yeah.
And I love that, dude. It worked so well.
Right?
I thought the jokes delivered. I like the eagerness of being involved in the quiz show, the routine that she had going with it. And yeah, I thought this was a really fun watch, one that I would definitely recommend on Hulu.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like very little things in this movie where it's like, what is this plan that these gangsters are doing? Like, why do they need to kidnap the dog? Like, what is up with the mother? And it's all little nitpicks that don't really matter in the scheme of things, as long as you're enjoying yourself. And especially like once they get going, once they're on their adventure, it's fun. It's two pretty charismatic people in roles that suit them, and some decently funny jokes, some bits that honestly, like when I saw it in Toronto, the entire theater was cracking up for, like that, to hear the sound in the room for the bit about her broken or dislocated wrist, just people squirming and cringing at it.
We were in art. Yeah, that was disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, but it's effective, right? Like it does elicit laughter, and it might not be the funniest movie, it might not be like the best story that you've seen in a comedy, but it works, it's effective, and especially for like a Hulu release, I think it's really strong. Maybe the fact that it isn't in theaters is kind of like, in a weird way, a good thing for this movie, because I don't know, it's like it's an okay theatrical experience, but it's a pretty good Hulu one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's some cameos in there that I know were kind of ruined when you went to the Q&A for that. I thought that worked really well, especially with, because it deals with a neighbor, and if you pay attention, that neighbor's address is, they're 664, she's 666. And they have a lot of funny moments in there. One of my favorite clips, like, it's in my top 10, it's in my top 2. Okay, it's my number 1.
Yeah.
Will Ferrell was really good in this movie, playing the Trebek type.
And kind of in a slightly different tone than I think we normally get from Ferrell. Like, he's so kind of gentle and soft voiced in it.
The sarcasm is in the background for sure.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Because it was given to another character who I know you were telling me this whoever made this movie really doesn't like.
Ken Jennings.
He's not the host anymore, right?
He is. I think him and Ryan Bialik are co-hosts on Jeopardy now.
Look, I don't watch it that much to have a complete opinion. Yeah. But I never liked Ken Jennings, and if this is how people really see Ken Jennings, I can see why.
I mean, I don't know if this is like how the Jeopardy diehards view Ken Jennings, but Jason Schwartzman plays him like a complete asshole. Yeah, no, yeah, I'm not bothered by it.
Yeah, no, this was really good. I like their sister bond and road trip. They had a pretty funny drug sequence in this movie as well. It's very rare to not have something that at least approaches it a little bit differently, especially because for our Scorsese binge, I went back to watch Wolf of Wall Street, looking for some more clips, and that it's not even the Quaalude scene. I always had it wrong. I thought it was the Quaalude scene that was the him driving back in his car. But he takes something else. It was like some other pill. So it's like that was still fresh in my mind, and we saw this one right afterwards, and I was like, oh, look, they were able to reinvent it in another way. Quiz Lady, very funny movie. I would recommend it over on Hulu.
For sure.
Now we have the movie that I was interested in because of who made it, and then slowly and little by little just became like a chore to watch because I feel like ever since the LA Times found really great success with that Flamin' Hot Cheetos thing, they have come out and have decided to belittle anybody if they didn't cross their T's, dot their I's. And I don't even know what to think anymore, because it's like, this is a movie about a woman's story who at 60 years old, after attempting it so many times, decides to swim for 60 something hours, right? From the coast of Florida to Cuba.
Other way.
She goes from Cuba to Florida?
Yeah.
Sorry. And in doing so, she's got people next to her, and the idea is that they can't assist her in any way, shape, or form.
except for assisting her with food and drink and
Right,
swimming
right,
suits.
exactly. At that point, I'm like, wait. So you guys have a problem with that, but not everything else? I don't know. I read the article. It like everything that stood out to me was weird for sure, but like
Yeah.
it did not stop the fact that this is still a 60-year-old woman swimming across.
Right.
I don't know.
It's weird because like there's certainly like obviously undeniably impressive aspects of her story.
Yeah,
But if you want to go to NYADfactcheck.com, there are people who have dedicated a lot of time, it looks
I
like,
gotta,
into
I gotta tell you this.
trying to debunk different aspects of her story, not just in terms of her swims, but like in terms of her personal life.
Everything.
Yeah, like going through like her claims of assault and stuff like that and trying to deny it. So I don't know how verifiable all of the fact check stuff is.
I was moving stuff in the Notion,
Mhm.
and I literally went to go get something, that terrible pot of coffee that I made the first time around. And I come back and I see you typing NYADfactcheck.com. That's what I was going to add. I burst out laughing. So just so you know, I found the same thing too.
Good,
And I
good.
think that's crazy that someone's paying for a domain.
Right. Like it might say something if somebody is going to the link of paying for a domain
But
just to like
don't
counter
you
the things that
think
you've said.
that's also haters out there?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, that I it's hard to know where the truth lies, and in cases like this, I often believe that it's probably somewhere in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I think it's hard to also ask us, the audience, to be the litigators of the truthfulness of stuff like this, right? Like
Yeah.
ultimately, this is being consumed as a piece of entertainment, right? And maybe the entertainment feels a little bit more hollow if you know that you're being manipulated or lied to. But
Josh Wilson.
I also feel like the I don't know if I agree with that, but
Yeah.
um I think it's they're both NYAD and John Wilson are after very different things, but I think it's also that like NYAD doesn't really work the same way if like it's not being truthful about the circumstances, because the circumstances are part of what's effective about it, if that makes any sense.
Oh, I agree. Um, I think, and we'll get into like breaking down the movie itself because, like you were saying, it's supposed to have some awards buzz, and you could still judge a movie. Woman King was another example from a couple
Right.
years ago where it's like people were really upset that they weren't showing them as like terrible people, but it's like they kind of got into that subplot, but nonetheless they were trying to look at them as like from their perspective, and we get this from mobster movies to Killers of the Flower Moon is another one that's been getting backlash for being too much on the killer's side.
Perspective, yeah.
Yeah, for NYAD, I know that right off the bat when they were talking about the movie, they had already mentioned that they lied about a shark attack that was in there, more so because they wanted to showcase what the protocols would have been if a shark would have attacked her. But a shark
Right.
never attacked her. And yeah, when I was reading up on NYADfactcheck.com and several other sources, there was like people calling her out because of her having a photograph where she was like being helped up. And they're like, this is proof. And then someone came in and said, well, she's wearing a completely different outfit. And they were like, so what? And it's like, well, yeah, like if you want her to be truthful, then the people also wanting to tear her down, y'all gotta be truthful too if you're fighting for the
Mhm.
truth. And yeah, that's where things get very sticky with it. But movie wise,
Movie wise,
what did you think of their performances?
I thought they were fine. I thought it was very kind of like traditional Hollywood biopic acting. You know, it's a bit of a departure from the Annette Bening that I think maybe we're more used to. She has like a very
Blunt.
gruff demeanor. She's obviously doing a lot of the swimming herself, so it's a bit of a physical role for her as well. And Jodie Foster maybe is a little bit more in a mode that we're used to seeing her in, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They're like it's kind of just a film where they have a very chartable character arc, right? Like it's leading to a monologue deep in the second act that's going to be them like really growing as a person over the course of 30
Yeah.
seconds of dialogue. I just felt like maybe because the film itself doesn't really stray too far from uh you know traditional biopic territory, that I wasn't too moved by their performances either, even though I found them both effective.
Yeah, there was a certain point early on when they're arguing with each other, and they'll just be talking, and someone will be like, "Did you forget the stuff from Petco?" And then they have to grab the Petco bag and put it like that, or she's drinking Diet Coke. That I'm like, ah, okay. A lot of this is kind of being compromised for the big feature film that they wanted to make, and I think it's an interesting way to showcase it because of the director's background. Um,
We should
I,
mention
however,
it's Elizabeth Vasarhelyi and Jimmy Chin,
I
who
just wish
are the
they
documentarians who
yeah.
made Free Solo and other documentaries we like, but it's their feature film debut, narrative
Might as well have
debut,
just made it
rather.
another documentary, if we're being honest with you. I
Yeah,
think that the way that they're able to approach their documentaries, I think, does it in a much better way. There were moments, knowing about all of the behind the scenes and about how it may have been a lie, where you start listening to some of the lines that she says in the
yeah,
movie and even in interviews. I just want the honesty, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe you guys are pretty good feature film directors, and you were kind of getting aspects of it
right.
out of
Well,
her.
the epilogue ends, and the epilogue starts rather, and it's like 30 people witnessed her journey. It's like, oh, you're trying to make sure that we know that there's
Yeah.
people who can fact check this. Okay, um, I don't know. I
Right,
mean,
because
I
they show
think
you with one boat, but the end credits do say there were several boats, and I'm like, so then why don't you show that in the movie? Because that's what you're being called out
right.
for.
Exactly. I in my letterbox review, I called it perseverance porn or the Everest of the water. Like Everest to me is kind of the movie to compare it to because it's less about like the journey of the character, even though the character does show some growth by the end,
Hmm.
than it is just like spending the time in the elements, witnessing the adversity of the protagonist, right? Like rather than
Yeah,
extreme cold and blizzards, it's also extreme cold and the dead of night and sharks and box jellyfish.
jellyfish.
Like it's just about like how many obstacles can nature throw at her way,
Yeah,
and Annette Bening will just sort of half deliriously say, "I'm gonna stay swimming" or whatever.
with her big lips like that,
Yeah,
like everything had just been sucked out of her. There were some really interesting night shots. I will give them that when they
yeah.
kind of showcased how you follow her through the night. There's like it almost looked like a jellyfish itself. That red glow that they put in
Hmm.
the water. She would also have these moments where while she's swimming, they put you into her headspace where she recalls a lot of stuff from her youth, be it her stepfather who explained to her that you could go all the way to Cuba, like it's swimming distance.
Yeah,
But there's one through line also about like her swimming teacher and like what she had to persevere there, and it's I thought that was really well written and performed by her in the sense that like she's overcoming a past trauma, and if she could overcome that, what is this swimming 60 hours? I was like, all right, you guys have a pocket here that does really work, and could have stood out. uh, but yeah, I think that covering this as a documentary might have been a little bit better. I think there's only so far you can get in a movie like this, where yeah, comparing it to Everest or a lot of other movies, oh yeah, you're just seeing them kind of go through the trauma there. There was one
yeah.
moment though where she's like doing practice, and they put a filter on her flashbacks or her memories.
Hmm.
I thought that at first my TV went wonky because it's imitating what it looks like when the light goes through the water, right? Then I
Yeah.
thought I was full on having a stroke, and it took me a while because it then comes back to the normal time. That I was like, oh, okay, it's an effect, bro. I got so scared, I did not know what was going on.
Had to like
But
check your glasses or whatever.
yeah, I was hoping I wasn't smelling burnt toast. But
Yeah,
NYAD, I don't hate it. But I think they make much better documentaries. I think that really gets into the truth of it. And I
yeah.
think when you compromise the truth with a movie like NYAD and a movie like what was it, the other LA Times, but
Flaming hot.
Flamin' Hot, that you can like the story of her and her partners here in NYAD, and you can also love the love story in Hot Cheetos, but you can't deny that a big thing that's up in the forefront is that the truth of them making it up,
Exactly.
from the bottom up, and yeah, that can kind of compromise the story a lot.
Last week we previewed this movie a little bit, and I mentioned that Jeff Snyder was saying that this is a potential Best Picture contender, and we were joking a little bit because he is somebody who is known to throw out some crazy proclamations here or there. But I do think there's something to be said about this being kind of a potential middle of the road choice. We talked about Coda earlier this year, just like a easy, satisfying kind of movie that I don't know if I want to count it out of the Oscars discussion right now, but I
No,
do think I would be surprised if it got literally any nominations.
no, you got Rustin coming up right around the corner. Like, why would that's another Netflix movie that's also based on a true story, and that's not
True.
getting fact checked like that. Go for that. You have way more options. So I agree with you, and I would say that if for whatever reason it pops up, it deserves even more hate than at that point because no, I was reading up World Guinness Records. They revoked her thing. The Swimming
Wow,
Association of Florida revoked her thing. Like,
that's
hey,
pretty damning.
she's still swimming uphill. Let's just put it that way. But NYAD,
Yeah.
it is out on Netflix. Probably the best way to watch it. If you were curious on the story, not a bad movie, but probably a compromised backstory when it comes to what she did.
Yeah.
Other than that, any other little pop-ups that you wanted to for other movies that are on the week before we move on to the news of the week?
I mean, we could give a quick shout to Ralph Barbosa if you want, because you put him on my radar. So I decided to check out the special. It was my first
What do
time
you think?
seeing his comedy. You know, I think he's got this kind of low energy, dispassionate delivery that
Thank you.
occasionally will be like interspersed with like a moment of liveliness. And he does a sort of like sly, occasionally naughty little punchline that it feels like he's just kind of sneaking in there. It reminds me a lot of Dion Cole's stand-up. I don't know if you ever
I
watched
know
Dion Cole. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like now
Dion got
he's
a lot of energy
obviously
sometimes when that comes out. Yeah.
he's obviously like in the Old Spice commercials and stuff now. But I think they both have this really fun sort of sneakiness to their humor, right? Where
Yeah.
like they you won't they'll play it low key and they'll throw out something like really crazy and it's like, oh, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
So it's fun. I mean, I didn't find the special like to be overly hilarious, but it's pretty consistently
Yeah.
amusing. The bit about Dasani and drinking like it's drinking from the hose, I thought was very funny.
That was pretty good. Yeah, that
um
was one of his top jokes.
yeah, I mean, it feels, like a classic first special. He's built in the material, he's got that hour long, and it's very entertaining.
Yeah, he was a little nervous in this one. I wanted it to be a little bit better, but it wasn't bad for it. I would highly recommend if you see any of his other clips on YouTube. He's got some other ones that are like he'll have like a 5 or 10 minute set that I think easily mops his first one. But good point. First set, going through the growing pains. I'm very curious to see what he does next.
Then I also checked out over on Prime the hot potato
I told you.
documentary, the story of the Wiggles.
I saw Caitlin would mess with it. I told you.
Yeah, I mean it's solid. I think it's interesting to see people talk about making children's music like earnestly, like the
Yes,
actual
sir.
the craft of it, and not just sort of saying, oh, it's
For
just
money.
silly, or it's just, yeah, like they're actual like artists, right? um
Thank you. I'm glad you said
and
that.
yeah, yeah. It's also just cool because, like, particularly given that they speak the Wiggles, that is speaks to a very young set of people. They talked about how their fan base sort of turns over every 3 years. So just
Yeah.
seeing almost the generational aspect, that even though uh this is a group that's been around for maybe like what 30 years, there's like generations upon generations of kids who've grown up with them. Also very fascinating to see. I do gotta say though, to me, the funniest thing that I've seen in a movie all year is when they're talking about one of their shows and the Blue Wiggle says Greg was on fire, and it cuts to Greg singing "Do the Monkey" and making monkey
He was lit, bro.
sounds.
He was lit.
it, it's like some pop star never stopping stuff,
But
but
they're genuine about it.
they're
And that's what
genuine.
gets you like, it's so
It's
funny,
great.
but like, oh, you
It's
really
pretty great.
need it. Hey,
Yeah.
look, Mozart's Concerto Number 5,
Mhm.
fruit salad, yummy, yummy. To me, I mean, they're literally right there when you're a toddler. So, hot potato, the story of the Wiggles. I'm glad
Hey,
you got it, dude.
the elephant fruit salad cover, that brought me a lot of joy during the lockdowns, I
Bro, the
gotta say.
breakdown of that and the fact they got song of the I don't know what radio station that was, but I was like, I remember when that dropped. I didn't realize
Same.
it was that big of a hit, but there wasn't
Yeah.
that much music dropping in 2020.
Nope.
It does kind of go hard though.
Mhm.
It was pretty good. But yeah, Hot Potato, The Wiggles. Always good to recommend this one. I think it was one of the better documentaries
Yeah.
of the year. I also got the Sly one. I don't have that pulled up, but I did see the
Oh
Sylvester
yeah, me
Stallone doc.
too. What did you think about it?
What'd you think of that one? I'll pull it up right now.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was like, we talk a lot about these documentaries that are profiles of famous people, and I think we've used the term in the past that it's like a commercial, and I don't
Yes.
know like what Sly is selling. Maybe the
Himself.
better thing is to say that this is like a video autobiography, right? Because it's not really a biography. It's not getting into all the ups and
Nope.
downs and the nitty gritty, or interrogating him at his lowest, but it's like his story the way that he would like to tell it. And rather than sit down and write a book, because not as many people read books, he sat down and did a documentary about his life. And
Yes.
I think there's an interesting aspect to hearing his story from his mouth. Like I particularly enjoyed hearing him talk about what he thinks about filmmaking and why certain films work and why certain films don't work. And, you know, him talking about why he thinks the farce is a dead genre of comedy. It's interesting, fascinating stuff. I don't know if I always agree with him. But like,
but he's given his opinion, right? And that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like, that's the thing though. Some of these biopics, the talking heads with the actual person they're focusing on are worthless. I think here they're the best stuff. I kind of almost just want more of that. Even if it is kind of surface level, it's still interesting to hear Sly talk about these aspects of his career.
Yeah, this is definitely on the profile side, like you said, in where we always want the raw nitty gritty. We always think you need like an outside force for that. Sometimes you don't get the rights to things, but this is like the best version of a profile doc because there are some camera work where it feels like he just told like his dog or a kid, yo, put the camera, I have an idea to film what I was thinking during this moment in time. And the camera's like over there, like I don't even know. It looks like the person's boxing with the camera. It looks terrible. But he's giving you insights on what he felt when he was making something. And I would say, like you were saying, it's like he chose to not make a book. He made a movie, but it's somewhere in the in-between where it feels like a YouTube video, a behind the scenes of his like insights to what he felt during some of this filmmaking. And he just so happens to get Quentin Tarantino to sit down and say some stuff. I like when he got Talia back in. Yeah. Wesley Morris, bro, usually that's been like a radar to me. If they can get Wesley in there, I assume, okay, he's approving of it to some degree, you know. This is like the person who most journalists look up to as being like the
New York Times film critic. Yeah.
What did he win?
Pulitzer Prize winner.
So when he popped out, I'm like, okay, there's something going on there. At least he sees the honesty of a man who cares. Like you said, you may not agree with him, but I think people really underestimate that this isn't just like a guy who just wants to look cool and likes the blood and stuff. He breaks down filmmaking to a degree where you're like, oh, you care about the editing? The directing, the emotions. He starts breaking down him and Schwarzenegger, how they were going at it with the muscles and the blood and the guns. Okay, you got a bigger gun? Cool. Well, I held the bigger gun with one hand. And I loved hearing the behind the scenes and how they really saw it as, you know,
a competition.
Filmmaking, a competition, but also like the art to all of that macho-ness, that there was a craft to it. And I found that really fascinating. I've always loved listening to Stallone because I know he cares. I know he's a dude that, as much as Expendables is trash, he knows how to give the audience what they want. And I felt they were belittling Rocky 3 and 4 a little bit too much in this movie because I think those are some of people's beloved ones, especially with 4.
Yeah, I was surprised how much he doesn't seem to like Rocky 3. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think in retrospect, he'll make Sly 2 and look back at those as well. But yeah, no, it was really cool to see his behind the scenes talking to a lot of that. And I would recommend it. I know this also premiered at TIFF. So it'd be one to keep on your radar.
But it is
not as a top documentary, but
but it is interesting too, because like, as we're saying, since this really is like the story he wants to tell, there are probably going to be aspects of his career that you're interested in that just get completely uncommented on. I don't think they even mention the Creed movies once.
They don't mention the Creed movies. They like barely talk about his child, which to be, I feel like that would be a little bit more in a movie called Sly. And he gets into like the critic stuff, but he'll never really read the worst reviews. He'll just go immediately into the ones that didn't get the movie, and he's like, "Meet me in an alley. I'm gonna box you." And I'm like, "Yo, he's the original. What's his name?"
You a bull? That's actually brought up. I was gonna ask you a question. You know, we've talked on this podcast for several years. You've got your Let Me Explain channel where you've talked about so many movies. Of all the people that you've given negative reviews to, who do you think you'd be the most afraid for coming out for you, challenging you to a fight? Because Sly in the 70s and 80s, he's got to be up on that list.
Yeah, but not right now. He said he's had 5 back surgeries, so I can go at him. I don't know. That's actually a really good question. Dang, I'd have to come back to you on that.
Because I definitely
say no one. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's probably one of the wrestler turned actors. I don't know if The Rock or John Cena is somebody I should be more afraid of. Luckily, I've said nothing but good things about Dave Bautista.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've talked. I'm not gonna say smack. I've talked truth about a lot of people, and I know there's a lot. I never really mentioned it, but we do get a lot of directors, writers, producers that come in our DMs. You get to see them sometimes in our comments as well. I never make a big deal out of those because I feel that even when we do a lot of interviews, I'm always hesitant because you do an interview and then you're almost like slowly pseudo become acquaintances and friends, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but the next movie that comes out, I don't want to compromise that truth. All that to say, Drake. I know it's Drake. I know it's Drake. I know Drake listens to every word that's said about him, and he'll take that to the next step. And I feel he's heard something, and I think that's why I've gotten some of my music videos hit. I think he's got the pull.
So yeah, definitely don't want to mess with Drake. He's certainly pulling some strings behind.
But it's very rare.
Yeah,
I
behind the
have
scenes.
gotten directors who do like, or
Yeah.
actors who do appreciate like me going at them, and they'll like respond to me and be like, "Yo, I disagree with you," but I was like, "That's completely fine. Of course you do. Like you've spent time in this." But I
Yeah.
know I hit something that you probably felt where it was compromised, and sometimes it's not even their fault. Like they just knew that they were arguing with the director or something. I don't know. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I never really get too deep into it because yeah, I think the more that you become friends with people. Someone did reach out at one point and they're like, "Yo, I really love your stuff." Then they were a voice in an animated movie, and I wasn't very happy with the animated movie, and they unfollowed me right after the release of that video. So that happens a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm here for the listeners. I'm not really here for the interviewers. So
Yeah. There we go.
Sly, if you ever want a box, sure, I'd be down to at least see it. I think that would be fascinating. It's a win-win though. You know, I've noticed that with Fantano. You can diss somebody, and if they ever come out to say anything, you as a reviewer have won. The
Yeah.
moment
Oh
you
yeah.
get acknowledged, you have won. It doesn't even
Exactly.
matter at that point. That means you struck a nerve.
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't think I ever talk smack. I think some people get very personal, and I don't think I get personal. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
I try
No,
to be honest or
we're
real about it.
we're doing criticism, and but
Yeah,
sometimes people don't really love to
don't
hear
like
that
criticism. Yeah, that
criticism.
happens all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah, and that leads to copyrights.
Yeah.
Oh,
Have you
there's
have
a horror.
you
There's a horror person,
oh
and we
really?
did the math. Yeah, every single time we've covered their movies, I can guarantee you it's from them. And they're a big horror. They're a big horror person. Who? I don't even know what you're mouthing, but it's a big horror person. Every single time we've covered their stuff, even when we've cut it up and re-uploaded it, they have always hit us.
Uh, you're gonna have to tell me after this podcast.
Yeah,
Did you catch any of the second season of Invincible yet?
all four.
Oh, okay. So I think people have only had the chance to see one. I've also seen all four. What do you think, at least, of season two, part one?
Look, more than ever. Yes, that's the man right there. Invincible Part 1 is not as powerful as season 1 is because I've been going back to cut up like a previously on Let Me Explain for the first season of Invincible, which I think is one of the best adaptations, one of the best things Prime has put out there. And I think that season 2 is facing that uphill battle of having been so fantastic in season 1 that it's now trying to make up for that incredible pilot episode, right? And it
Yeah.
just won't be able to. It's also dealing with a lot of the aftermath that happened with the finale of the other one. I think it's solid. I think it's good. But even out of the four episodes that we've gotten, I think it's not that it's filler, but it's filling in a lot of the aftermath before we
Mhm.
actually get the continuation of that final fight that we got.
The way that season one ended is a kind of like momentum shifting
One for the
event
ages.
for the world of Invincible. But I think it also left things in a place where they had to do a lot of picking up of the pieces and putting them back into place. And I think that's what a lot of what's happening in this part one of season two is sort of resetting the deck, reshuffling or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think it still hits, but I think the thing that I get concerned about with a show like this, which is sort of the thing that's been happening to me with The Boys as well, is that these shows that go so extreme, can you get to a place where it just ends up all feeling muted because it's all so
Desensitized?
extreme? Yeah, do you sort of desensitize yourself to how hard hitting the world is, how suddenly things turn? Like there was a major sort of character death that that happens, but it happens so frequently on this show that I don't know if it even registered to me as like a major
Mm,
moment, if that makes any
yeah.
sense.
No, for
So
sure.
I still really want to see where they go to, because I think they've set things up really interestingly. But at the same time, I could see myself becoming disillusioned with the show.
One thing I will have as a criticism: there are certain voice actors in this who play some of like the side heroes. I am sorry, but I cannot not see your voice, like your face. It just stands out
It's Ben
too
Schwartz,
much.
isn't it? It's Ben
It's Ben
Schwartz.
Schwartz and Mitsukis, bro. I cannot not hear them, bro. It's bad. It's
I
bad.
mean, they are very busy, prolific voice actors, I think we could say.
Seth Rogen too, but they're all like buddies, and Seth Rogen's a
Yeah,
producer on the show as well. But
yeah,
yeah, they voice stuff, and it's like I am not hearing anything but you guys, and even when you do other animated stuff, like y'all will not change at all.
yeah.
But yeah,
All right, should we get into some news?
let's get into this news because it was a massive report that came out from Variety about Marvel being in shambles. Zach, I'm gonna have you break it down, but I feel there's two things that I'm tired of hearing. The
Yeah.
first is, oh, Trump's gonna go to jail. This is it. And the second is, that's it. It's over for Marvel. It never happens, bro. So tell me why I should even care about this.
All right. Well, Variety put out a long article. I think a lot of people had a lot of opinions on some of the things that they uncovered in the article. It focused on a few things going on with the company. Obviously, some of their films haven't been hitting as well, whether that's
That's
critic
my theory.
the critical and audience reception not being as strong with their last few movies, the box office numbers also not being as strong with their last few movies, and some of the resetting that's happening, because there was a point early after the onset of the pandemic when it seemed like Disney Marvel was trying to make it so that there would never not be some new Marvel thing happening, whether it's the movies or the shows. It was going to be one thing after another after another. And what this article essentially asserts is that it kind of diluted the talent pool at Marvel, and that people like Kevin Feige and his trusted cohorts couldn't quite oversee projects the same way that they would, and it leads to production problems down the line. A lot of the article talks about all the issues they've had with the unfinished VFX. Quantumania premiering with quote at least 10 scenes where the visual effects had been added at the last minute and were out of
Disgusting.
focus. If you
Disgusting.
watched Quantumania, you know that they actually updated those effects post-release.
Thor 4?
Thor 4 had the same thing. They again and again, these movies and shows are being released with unfinished visual effects, or even the trailers are showcasing them.
Well, we know this.
Yeah, we know all that. Although it's talking about it in some more detail, a lot of people say that those are some of the primary reasons that Victoria Alonso was fired, even though they claimed that it was because she was working on a different movie and Oscar campaign for that. The article asserts that that's more of a cover story. The article also uncovered, I think, a really interesting thing, that She-Hulk episode 1 was originally supposed to be a flashback that happened in episode 8. And part of the reason why A, the effects look bad, and B, it sort of feels kind of like a janky start to the series, is because late in the process, they sort of refigured that in order to kind of give people a Mark Ruffalo episode off of the bat, and perhaps like boost those episode 1 viewing numbers.
I think that's one thing that you and I have always looked at when it came to these shows. They kind of did that Quibi thing where they took a big movie and they're like, okay, what if we split it up to be a series instead? And while people were making fun of the $250 million budget that it had, it was like, well, yeah, they were able to do that because it's TV, but it's also a movie budget that they chose to make episodic because that way they were never going to finish the VFX, and by delaying the release, by making it a weekly thing, they were able to have extra weeks of people, turmoiling over all of this, and it's not a good way to go about the business. Obviously, at a certain point, it's going to catch up to you. But like, did people really need this report as part of it? When we talked about Thor 4, we said those effects look terrible, and you always get the MCU stands. You just don't get it. And then it's like a cult when it comes out that they did get updated. So are you going to delete your comments? And they never do. I think the people who are said and loving this are said and loving this. I don't know how much of it's going to change. Some of the ones that did stories that stood out to me was a report of
Go ahead.
Blade.
Yeah, so Blade has been undergoing several rewrites, and we've been hearing about all the delays. In fact, I think the original announced release date was this weekend. I think it was supposed to come out in November
We're
2023,
doing you.
but hasn't even begun production yet. There was a
That's
rumor.
crazy. That's crazy.
Crazy. There's a rumor that one of the scripts had rewritten it, so it was quote like about Blade learning life
I
lessons, and
think
it was
that's a
mostly
lie.
centering the female leads, and Blade was
That's
the
a
fourth
lie.
lead. I've seen one of the people who actually worked on the script for Blade come
Yeah.
out and say that they never saw something like that. And
Yeah.
that's another thing you end up getting with reports like these, is sometimes people are placing items for trying to get a specific agenda across. So I don't know what the agenda
Right?
is there, but you know, it's interesting at least knowing that all these issues with Blade have led Marvel in part to slash the budget of the film back down to only 100 million. Still sounds like a lot. It's a lot less than they produce most of these superhero properties
That ain't
for.
right. That's not
Um,
right.
yeah, so in I understand like the sentiment of thinking that's not right. I do think it's a thing that Marvel really has to start exploring, is that they need to make some of these projects not be massive gambles. They need to produce some things that don't they need to be able to produce things that don't earn or don't lose money if they don't earn over $1 billion, because that's where they've
Sure.
been at for so long, and it makes the stakes impossibly high to continue to live up to. Now, choosing to do that with
For
Blade
Blade.
first may not
That's
be the
not
right way to
right.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also think that the release of this it makes no sense. A little sidebar right here. The uh Hassan Minhaj article that was
Yes.
made on him. I We never fully covered that, but that was a whole release that came out calling him out for a specific special and things that he had said. And this New Yorker article went out on him.
Mhm.
That man took a couple of time to gather all of his facts, and he released a report, like a pretty much a video. He made his own, like he brought back his show, and he's like, "No, here's a breakdown. You lied about this, this, and this," and there was some pretty hefty points. The article had
Yeah.
said he showed a picture of his prom date, which is like a big joke. He's like, he practically doxed her. He goes, "Those are actors." Right off the bat, if the New Yorker couldn't even get that right,
So I want to come back with that one too, because some of the points in his video he was also not being the most truthful about. He was talking about the picture he showed during the special. Apparently, the picture he showed on the Broadway performance was the real picture. So even in his response, he kind of left out certain
actors, okay.
details. He didn't respond to the accusations of people who felt the women who felt like they weren't being listened to on the production of his show. They didn't respond to the idea of the fact checkers who felt like they were being ignored on his show. So even in his response, there were some like gaps in that. But again, I
Half-truths.
think this goes back to what I was saying earlier, though, in that a lot of times the truth just lies somewhere in the middle.
True, but like, and you were saying with this, what is the intent of reporting something in a certain
Yes.
way? We all know that they are looking for a replacement for the Daily Show. That man
Hmm.
really wanted the Daily
Right.
Show, and this came out. Why release this Variety article right now, right in the midst of the Marvels having the worst pre-sale records that Marvel has ever had? Right before they're about to get into production for Blade, right as they're about to release Echo, right? Like that's
Hmm.
another one that they did dirty. Oh, we want to do all of these, things in terms of having the first superhero who's indigenous, who is has a
Deaf.
disability,
Yep.
and then kind of just drop it in the midst of this. I don't know. I feel like it kind of works in cahoots because when they released this article, every person made a video on it.
Hmm.
Like it, I think they know how the rollout goes. I know that if something gets reported on, they know that there's going to be this trickle effect of a bunch of people covering it, so they could become this massive thing.
Marvel, more than any other film studio right
They're
now, I
smart.
think is very good at playing the trades to their favor. Like the casting rumor cycle and stuff like that. They are very
Black
much in
Widow,
control of how those things come
never
out.
denying that Robert Downey Jr. was going to be on there until the week
Exactly.
of, right before. They're very smart. They're very smart.
Yeah. There are a couple other things that were addressed in the article. Do you want to talk about Jonathan Majors, or we talk specifically about the issues with the film The Marvels?
Shoot, both.
All right. I think we can get through some of the Marvel stuff a little bit faster because the film had a test screening where there were middling reviews. The latest is that Nia DaCosta had to step away from the film during post production to work on her new film, Hedda, which she's working on with Tessa Thompson in London, which started its own news cycle of people saying, no, that's a normal thing for directors to walk away during post production. Like, actually, maybe not. And Nia DaCosta has since come out and said that she was contractually obligated to be on this next film, but worked, virtually on the film in post production. Doesn't really sound like the most out of left field thing to me, particularly when you consider some of the previous comments that Nia DaCosta had made about her work on the Marvels, where she said that this is a Kevin Feige film, and that when you sign up to work on a Marvel project, you know that ultimately it's not yours, you're working for the company. I don't know if any of the stuff that had come out about Nia DaCosta or the Marvels has you feeling any kind of way about that movie.
It has me feeling like, and it's going to be my pick of the week, Nia DaCosta's Candyman has aged like fine wine, considering one of her Marvel stars is in that movie, literally going through this when she decides to get a job with some of the wealthy art exhibitors that is in that. But we'll talk about that for picks of the week. Why did that become a big deal? Like, directors do this all the time. I like to mention how you were saying that she was obligated to do both of these movies, and the Marvels kept getting pushed back. People like,
Yeah.
we know the
People
dates. They were
forget
getting
that it
pushed
got
back.
pushed back. Yeah.
It got pushed back a whole year and a half. She's like, no, I need to start this next thing, but I'm still going to be involved with it. But on top of that, why does she need to be involved with it? We all already know. It's not even in this article. It was in the Variety article probably 5 years back. She's only directing the actors. Then there's the B unit over there directing all the action. You guys don't even care if she's in the edit. You don't
Yeah, I mean,
care if she's in the edit, and she's not the first Marvel director to do that.
yeah, I mean, there are exceptions to the rule, obviously, like your Ryan Coogler's and your James Gunn's, but the vast majority of directors, I don't know if you can really feel too much of their presence on a Marvel movie,
Yeah, it's movie
particularly
number
when you consider,
2.
yeah, this is the sequel to the Marvels, and it's already
And,
sort of
and the WandaVision spinoff and the Miss
yeah,
like, come on now, be for real.
it's
Be
already
for real.
doing so much IP management. I don't
Also,
know.
I think all the trailers that they have released have been garbage, and I accidentally found an international trailer that actually made me laugh, and I'm like, so
Oh,
you can cut it up funny if you wanted to. The test screenings that you mentioned was the first time that they've ever done test screenings, not for friends and family, but for an actual audience. And again, I question why now? It's not even like the beginning of a phase. Why this one? And I don't know. I feel like it's a reverse engineered of getting the response that you want to cover up what you feel is not going to be a good movie. I feel it sounds like throwing your director under the bus. But look, it doesn't make me any more excited. It doesn't make me any less excited for the Marvels. But I definitely do think that it has me more peaked on the Costa now having more eyes on her and being able to have more eyes on her projects that have come in the past and that she's working on in the future, because I do like her as a director.
yeah. As much as I am usually negative on Marvel stuff, like I thought the trailer for the Marvels was like kind of cute. Like I don't think it's going to be the worst time I have at a movies this year. I've got my screening tomorrow night. I think you've also got yours tomorrow or the
Saying
next
Nikki
day,
baiting
something
me
like
with the
that.
X-Men rumors.
I mean, we could get into all that too, but let's do a quick pivot towards Jonathan Majors because
Innocent or guilty, Zach, go.
I mean that we'll have to take on the spin-off podcast, but for this one, executives discussed backup plans, including pivoting to another comic book adversary like
Crazy.
Doctor Doom. So
That
they
sounds
are
good, though.
starting to feel the pressure inside Marvel, partly because of Jonathan Majors' legal troubles, but also partially, according to the article, because of the not so stellar response to Quantumania. Art,
And
do you
Loki.
think? I mean, it's also just a weird thing of like they introduced their next big villain, their next Thanos, in a TV show when he's supposed to be the movie villain. And like I know Loki was seen by a lot of people, but it's not seen by nearly as many people as actually watch their movies. So
And if
I
they
don't know.
do, he's playing like a variant, so you're looking at him going like, oh, he don't look menacing all the time. He's kind of that
Yeah.
very weird approach, but sure.
I think they've made some big mistakes in the way that they've introduced the idea of Kang in the first place, like
Yes.
through a TV show and through one of their least popular film characters. But it's also like I don't know. I mean, Jonathan Majors' performance isn't the thing that is uh threatening this. It's
No.
I think, you know, whether or not they think he's physically going to continue to be allowed into these movies. Do you like the idea of pivoting towards Doctor Doom though? You're more of the comic
I
appreciator,
would
understander.
freaking love Doctor Doom. That to me should be the next big one. That would be the most phenomenal thing in the world because they've been building stuff from scratch. Thanos was big in the comics, but he wasn't really big in pop culture. Now he is, right? Like
Mhm.
building up the Guardians from scratch, building up all these things from scratch has been a fantastic thing that Marvel's been able to do. Doctor Doom's set. And if you can kill that story, yo, that's how you level up the Infinity Saga, Endgame, all that stuff with a villain like that. They chose Kang and they're deep into it. I'm like, you got to see this through, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
with all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes, I mean, they've been flip flopping, with that whole case going on him and then going on her. We don't commentate on that stuff here because that stuff's always going to have new cycle rumors coming out.
Yeah.
Um, Again, this being a rumor as well sounds like a way for them to try to pivot off of that or to try to come off like, oh, we're not really wanting to focus on him. But he is the main character right now, the main villain in the Loki series that I feel no one's really watching.
I just don't understand the aversion to recasting. Like they seem so set in their ways with this particular casting, but you know, we recast Terrence Howard with Don Cheadle.
So it
They
does happen.
recast Scott Lang's daughter every other movie,
So
right?
it
Like
does happen,
why
right? So if
would
it
it be
does
that hard
happen,
to just cast a different actor and just be like, no, this is Kang now, guys. This is a different variant of Kang.
and that was the argument that people had for Black Panther.
Right.
I think both you and I like what they did with Wakanda Forever, but
Hmm.
they were very much that no, we can't do a recasting for this. But it's like, but you have
Yeah,
done recastings for the other ones. So
totally.
why is this yet another one where they can't do a recasting for? It does again make you wonder what's the real reasoning behind not wanting to go that route. I think they need to finish off the storyline with him or not. I do agree with you. I hope they keep him. I think he's a fantastic actor. I would like to see him finish it off. All things considered, going well. But you have the ability to just get somebody else, bring them in, go that route, finish up that storyline, and then lead into Doom. Right? You've been hyping up the Fantastic Four every week. The rumors about the casting for the Fantastic Four that will be set in stone. No need to rush it. But yeah, we've kind of already invested ourselves in Kang for a little bit. Um, I think they need to finish that up.
So I guess in concluding our talk on this article, at least, you know, the article mentions that there have been discussions about the idea of like the break glass in case of emergency, go back to your original Avengers lineup, throw whatever money possible at Robert Downey Jr., bring
That's
back
so dumb.
Scarlet, just explain it away in some variant or multiverse kind of thing, and give the people what they know, what you know they'll show up and see. You don't think that's the way out of this quote unquote crisis. You also seem to be a little bit more optimistic about the future of Marvel than this article and maybe I am.
Like, what do you think is going to happen to Marvel? Like, this
Well,
isn't the worst article that's come out on them.
yeah. I mean, I think there is an argument to be made that their dominance over the culture is waning. I'm not saying that the studio is going to be
Yes.
destroyed or the
Yeah,
MCU
yeah,
is
yeah.
ending,
No, for sure.
but the sort of like the way that Avengers Endgame felt like a monocultural moment where everybody was either seeing it or at least very aware of it.
Hmm.
They are not really as monocultural as they used to be. Now, maybe the maybe that means that like people are shifting, as we've seen like this year there's all this enthusiasm towards things like Oppenheimer and Barbie and Five Nights at
That's good.
Freddy's and Super Mario. Like people are maybe ready for different styles of blockbuster, but I think that maybe the thing that really is going to help Marvel in the end is when they stop sort of messing around with these, you know, lesser known characters and these lesser loved stories, and they try to, you know, shoehorn in um team ups and stuff that maybe people are less interested in, and they give us the X-Men movie that we know is coming, that
That's what
they
I'm
actually
saying.
hit Fantastic Four out of the park, you know, that they return to the stuff that pe- has a built-in audience for it,
Yeah.
and they just do it well.
I think that MCU origin story is getting very boring. Even seeing it in DC with Blue Beetle, it's like people know the origin story too
Yeah.
well. So you're at that point where, the way that they approach Spider-Man, they're like, oh, we already know that he got bit by a spider. They started off Homecoming, immediately with him already being Spider-Man. We know that DC has been doing really well with the Batman, with Joker, with all of these movies that are superhero films that are really disguising indie films into being something bigger. I think Marvel's going to get there. Marvel's going to be able to make what they've already done in the past. Winter Soldier was a spy thriller. I think the less time that they focus on making these movies that are supposed to connect to another movie and focus on these genre type of films, they're
Yeah.
set. Their problem is that they keep hiring directors, and I see a lot of people mention that in the chat, to not be the directors that they are known to be, and they like form them into the Kevin Feige project as opposed to Marvel not being scared to be a part of them. DC's been doing that perfectly with the Joker, with the Batman. I think that's what Gunn is really going to try to knock out of the park with his DCU. So if they have that going for them in hiring these directors, that they have more than enough money to lure them in, have them make the type of project that they want to make, that will get people interested. Oh, you're doing something different. I can come to any of these movies and not have to have all of this encyclopedic knowledge of the MCU. I could just be invested in this project and it's good. You have to create that competition within yourself, The idea of like, don't have the MCU fans be afraid of the DCU. Have the MCU fans go, no, this character's better than this character. This movie approached it way better than this. And then to still sit back, like you said, on your Fantastic Four, on still continuing with Spider-Man, still having all of these big franchises, the X-Men. I don't think it's going anywhere, man. They got too
Mhm.
much money invested, and I've also, like you said, I'm a big comics fan. This is what happens in comics, baby. Like they just restart with another number one, and I think it's just the growing pains. If this is a sequel in terms of sagas, we finished not the phases, but that Infinity Saga, and we're on the Saga 2. Just like Lost season 2, Yellow Jacket seasons 2, people leave for a little bit, but they have to find their footing for what's next. It's not done yet. It's not done
Yeah.
yet. But yeah, in the meantime, people are focused on other stuff, and they need to get their stuff together. It's just
Yeah.
become really big.
That's the thing is I think that for a lot of people who are maybe more casual Marvel participants, I would put myself in that category, is like the Thanos saga gave us a clear sort of direction, right? We all knew it was moving towards this big team up, something that we hadn't seen before. And obviously with the threat of Kang and the Avengers movies that they've put on their 4-year plan, 5-year plan, whatever it is, like we know it is eventually going somewhere, but it feels so wide ranging. It feels so hard to like get
Wake
your
me up when
arms
we get
around it.
there.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like that. Like I was trying to keep up with the shows. I'm not doing that anymore. It's too much time. It's too many different
It is a
characters
lot.
I frankly don't care about. And when the purpose of a lot of these properties is just to get them ready for their team up in the Marvels or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I didn't watch Miss Marvel, and I feel like I'm ready for. I watched one episode of Miss Marvel, and I feel
And
like
you're
I'm
good to
ready
go.
for the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I don't know. Yeah. I think that they'll find their footing eventually, but right now it's not bad to give the mention of how they're just going through those growing pains of not being able to live up to the hype that they had before.
Definitely. And I saw here that Josh, I think it was mentioned that they have the whole Marvel Spotlight division, which is dedicated towards more small scale stuff. Like we were talking before, I think the idea of not having every single property need to make a gigantic amount of money in order to succeed will be good for them and will give them the chance to introduce more interesting characters that they want to introduce without putting these crazy expectations on them. And maybe the way future, which would be more similar to how they do it in the comic books, is just make lots of different individual projects for different characters. And if some combination of character and director or actor and writing or whatever hit, then you bump them up to the big project and there's an Avengers
The
movie in the
AAA.
works that they can be in, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, we don't need every single person to have a cameo in the larger crossover multiversal property.
Yeah. It's in shambles, but it's not going away.
Yeah, for sure. Quickly though, do you want to talk a bit about this Disney acquisition? Because there was a planned future for the rest of the stake in Hulu Disney and Comcast had an agreement to reach a deal on whether or not Disney would sell or buy out Comcast, the remaining Comcast shares in Hulu. Disney's
Good.
gone ahead and decided to pay 8.6 billion to acquire a full stake in Hulu, meaning Disney, at least in the US now, is in charge of Hulu, Disney Plus, and ESPN, all for themselves. They've got 3 streaming services under their bundle. Art, do you think this is a good decision? And do you think this maybe spells doom for the future of Hulu? Or do you think this is actually a good thing for the future of Hulu?
Interesting. I'm curious to know your doom decision because I, like you, remember reporting on the idea that they wanted to get rid of Hulu. That they were like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if we want to focus on that. Maybe we just want to push Disney Plus. And I think they realized maybe with like, I'm looking right here on the trending, The Bear being renewed. We were just covering movies that came out that are part of our lineup of theatrical releases, but they're on Hulu with Quiz Lady. And I think they realized that Hulu really is a big factor in that. I've been going to
Mm-hmm.
the theater, dude. And I've been seeing an influx of Hulu has live TV. They got that Jalen Hurts commercial
Yeah.
where he's just talking about the sports thing. Mind you, it's false advertising. You need the Hulu Plus live TV. It ain't really on your Hulu. But nonetheless, we know that for other countries, it's already been that bundle of Disney Plus and Hulu. So
They got
sometimes
it
we'll be
under
talking
Star.
about, yeah, we'll be talking about one service and they're like, oh, that's sitting on one for me. It's not
Yeah.
divided. I think they really should consolidate and combine them, and maybe this buyout is what's going to allow that. They were never fully able to make it that, and now that they own a majority of it, they'll be able to make it all into one. Put ESPN, Disney Plus, all of that, so that it doesn't become this like, kind of what HBO went through in it being HBO Max and then Max, and who knows how many more times they'll change it because I know they still kind of want to have it be Discovery. But that's now become the one app that Discovery Plus is in and the HBO is in, and now all of their Max originals. I think
Yeah.
they're kind of seeing all that mess that happened there and are going to do a rollout where they will combine it like it has been everywhere else. No reason to have this many subscribers here, here, and here when you can combine them all into one. And the smartest way to do it is combine them. Don't change the price for anybody. Just have it be that entry level price. I'm not a fan of the tiers, but that's going to be the easiest way to not screw people
Mm-hmm.
over. Make them think they're getting more, your same login, but now you're getting the Disney Plus stuff you didn't have as Hulu, or vice versa. And then add and implement those, like, I think Peacock's got it down pat right now with like, you can get it for free, full ads, you can get the premium stuff, and then you can get the highest one where you pay an extra $2.99. I'm getting charged twice by Peacock, bro. They are messing that part up. I'm
Uh-oh.
like paying for premium, and then their $2.99 no ads is a separate charge. It's very messy,
Yeah.
but if every single person is doing it, Prime is now doing it with their freebie, Prime, and then they're like Prime Lite that they're rolling out little by little. We know
Mm-hmm.
Netflix said they were never going to do ads, and they keep testing the maybe ads
They're
portion of it.
coming. They're coming.
It's obnoxious, but they're all kind of going to end up doing the exact same thing. And I don't know, I think it's good in terms of how they're going to put all of their stuff into one. And
Yeah.
maybe that can allow them to create better content. You think it's
Yeah.
bad? What do you think the
Well,
doom might be here?
Well, I mean, the doom is sort of the scenario you were laying out in which they decide to fold Hulu into Disney Plus, and then it's not its own distinct thing, but just a branch off of the larger
Yeah.
platform. And I think, putting Hulu within the Disney Plus economy maybe would limit some of the things that Hulu does really well. But I actually don't think that that's what's going to happen. We talked a lot about the idea of consolidation, and a lot of that was driven around this idea of, as you were mentioning, HBO Max and Discovery Plus merging into the mega Max service. But
Let me give you
the
another
initial,
one. Paramount.
yeah, Paramount's combining Showtime and
Showtime.
they're
Sometimes you were confused, like who's got what.
yep.
Hulu's doing that with Disney. Some Hulu stuff is going to Disney,
Yeah, Werewolf
right?
by Night, which was on Disney Plus, is now available on Hulu as well. So they're opening up their cross-platform abilities, I guess. But I think the thing is that if you look at some of the recent numbers we found out about Max, they have been underwhelmed with the amount of people who've switched over their service from Discovery
Yeah.
Plus to Max. There have been fewer signups. And if you look again at like Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, who at one point was saying that we were reporting on this before, that they were looking to get rid of Hulu, and now suddenly he is making a move to acquire all of Hulu. I wonder if the move for a company like Disney is not to make a gigantic bundle mega service that has everything in it, but rather say, hey, we have 3 services you can sign up for, and you can sign up for it all under one price, and you get 3 distinct things. And even if they're all products of the Disney company, Hulu, ESPN Plus, and Disney Plus all feel like distinct services in a way that I don't know if Paramount Plus and Showtime necessarily feel distinct, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's sort of the counter move to the consolidation of streaming services we're seeing, is kind of the artificially saying you get more for less thing.
Yeah, it could be. I just see like with the TV thing and Prime having their channels, Hulu
Mm-hmm.
having their channels. Like everybody wants to maximize having everything into under one umbrella. Apple TV does
Yeah,
the same thing. They want you to get these other streaming services underneath them. The worst thing they could be is that they bought it out just to destroy it because they
right.
couldn't destroy it if Universal owned 50% of it. But we'll see. Hopefully it's able to create better content. You know, I
Yeah,
think
for
that's
sure.
the big thing. Better movies and a better rollout of them, especially when it comes to how Peacock's got it down pat. A movie will come out in theaters, give it to 3 months, and now I think it's My Big Fat Greek Wedding just got added, right? And
Right.
they've kind of just been funneling this idea of like you will have a home for our theatrical movies uh, in the comfort of your own home when they come out to streaming. And I think that's what Hulu should be really banking on in Disney Plus.
Yeah, and I think it's also, hopefully, at least for our sake, they keep them separate, because it means it's more places for films and TV shows to potentially land, right? Like if Hulu
That's
and
a good
Disney
point.
Plus are both bidding over
Yeah,
a movie, then movies will there'll be more movies to go around. You know,
but
we're
don't you think they're
seeing.
still the same umbrella?
I mean, if you suppose, you would think that the companies would be smarter to not do that, but if you listen to some of these executives, they end up bidding against different departments all the time.
Yeah, they're idiots. So
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see where they take it from there.
yeah. All right, so should we get to our patron shout out?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. All right. Uh, Before we get to our picks for the week, let's give a big thanks to the Intercutie Plus patrons, those wonderful people who support the
Hey.
show. Thanks again for all the support, and a reminder that you too can become a member over at patreon.com/intercutpod, where you can sign up for updates on the podcast. And if you pay at least $1 a month, you'll get early access to some Intercut episodes, including the reviews that we're filming today, like Saltburn and the Holdovers. You'll get access to the private channels on the Intercut Discord, where you can chat with us throughout the week. And you can also join our monthly Google meetings with our patrons, which we'll be doing shortly after the live stream today. So not too late to head over to patreon.com/intercutpod, donate $1 a month, and come chat with us about movies. Let us know what movies you're looking forward to, what you hope wins an Oscar, what you've seen lately that you liked. The people who are in our Academy tier and wonderfully supporting the show are Tushar, Cademan, Connor, Josh, May, Ricky, Joe, Tyler, and Benji. And the producer level patrons are Yuden Veer and Toon. Thank you so much to all of you for your continued support of the show. Art, what are we going to talk about with the patrons on the Google meeting today?
I saw a lot of people watching Priscilla. I saw a lot of people
Yeah.
liking some of Coppola's films. We were going back and
Ooh.
seeing some of Coppola's films. I think it'd be a good discussion.
Yeah, we could put together a super quick Coppola bracket. Has she done 8?
Mm-hmm.
I think she's close to 8
I think
movies.
she's close to 8. I think we were saying if we count that Murray special, that Christmas special,
There
we
we
might
go.
actually have something there. But that'd be, yeah, that we could do a little bracket for that. But it's also, I mean, we're down to the last 2 months of best of the year. I think this is the watch list season, because then by next month, telling people, hey, get this on your watch list. Here's a list of 50 for 30 days in the holidays. Not going to be possible. So I think this is really the time to be asking everyone what are the things that haven't been on people's radar, and probably giving ourselves a 10-piece of movies or TV show to catch before the end of the year. Because then by next month, I think we will be doing probably like an Intercutie compilation of everyone's top picks as we lead into the new year.
Definitely. All right, so we get into our picks for the week, where we recommend about 10 movies for the people to see at home in
Mm-hmm.
theaters and everywhere.
Especially some double ups because we're getting into that point where we've got some really good movies coming up. And then
Hmm.
we also have the Marvels, Zach. The Marvels is coming out this week with all of the Marvel news on the horizon on whether they're not going to be here, whether they will. The Marvels is supposed to be the continuation that's bringing in two TV series characters. One who is supposed to be one of the best, most powerful superheroes in the MCU, and combining them in a comedy. I guess it looks like where they kind of got like a flu, where every time they kind of like sneeze their powers into play, they keep bouncing off of each other. The Marvels, directed by Nia DaCosta, is slated to be probably the biggest release they have this year, other than Ant-Man Quantumania. We used to get so many Marvel movies a year, and I feel like no one's going to remember the ones that were released in 2023. But that is coming out alongside Share, which I don't know too much about, and was really hard to find because it's Share question mark.
Question marks don't really do well in the Google search terms.
I saw you added this. Do you know anything about this?
I'm mildly curious about it for a couple of reasons. One, it's got a couple actors that we like in it, including Melvin Gregg and Bradley
Oh.
Whitford. But two, it becomes with a recommendation from Steven Soderbergh, who called it innovative as
Ooh.
fuck, I believe, because the entire film is shot from one still perspective. It's sort of an inverse of the like bottle film. It's not a bottle film, but everybody has the same exact camera angle. It kind of looks like one of those COVID Zoom movies, except that it's not a Zoom movie. It's a bunch of people locked in a room.
Oh.
But I mean, it sounds formally experimental. I'm
Gotcha.
curious. Maybe
So it
I'll
might
maybe
be a
I'll.
Cloverfield movie. Okay. I'll be looking
It
forward to
could
that
be.
one. So that Share and the Marvels coming out. So with that, I'm going to take the Marvels release and recommend some of Nia DaCosta's movies. One of
Yeah.
the big ones, especially, would be Little Woods, considering that that's really going to showcase the work that she does with actors, and I think that that's a really good thriller that shows you how she's able to get really good dramatic performances from people. But I would also shout out Candyman. I know this was a movie that a lot of people were disappointed with, but I think with all the news that's come out about Nia DaCosta and her work at Marvel, my even viewpoint of specific scenes in that movie that star a Marvel character or a Marvel actress in that movie almost being a surrogate for Nia DaCosta, I think hits even harder now. So as you go see the Marvels and people complain about it being another trash Marvel movie, that's a Kevin Feige product. A Nia DaCosta product would be these films that you see right here. So give them a watch if you're interested. The better superhero release that just wrapped up this week would be Gen V. I'm working on a whole LME for this because I did not expect a superhero property that's a spin-off that's on streaming service that you're gonna have to watch to really keep up with the real main timeline would be this freaking good, Zach. I don't know if you've caught up with this one yet, but
Not
I
yet.
think you liked The Boys.
Yeah.
I think right lived up
Yeah. I like the
for
boys.
subverting a lot of the superhero cliches and being a really good satire of the culture. Gen V continues that in school. It is about the college where a lot of these Gen V people, specifically babies who grew up with that serum in them, are now going to this academy that is always either going to make them superheroes or they're going to be like the front lines of just regular working Americans that have superpowers. And I think it builds up to be a really interesting way to cross over with the main timeline, but also answers a lot of questions in a very interesting way through these characters that helps build up the main timeline. And I think it does it in the way that Disney Plus and their whole shenanigans were supposed to kind of connect. I think it's superior in that sense. So shout out Gen V. It just wrapped. Very good finale. Try to not get it spoiled if you can. Over on Prime.
Yeah, the rumor is that the Gen V finale takes place like 2-3 days or something like that
Oh yeah.
before the events of the next season of The Boys. You feel that crossover?
Oh, easily. It does it seamlessly. The next one that I would have is the mystery pick. Rigo had a lot of these movies that they
Ooh.
were releasing on Mondays, and where you would have to show up, and they wouldn't tell you what it was until you were there. And AMC is like, yeah, I'm gonna copy that. They have what is called AMC Screen Unseen. It is like, uh, what, just the rating, the runtime. You have to sit there, and then you have to figure out what it's going to be. Now, I live an hour behind New York, so I get to see what the whole East Coast is watching and then decide if I want to go or not. That's how I've always done the Regal ones. That's how I'm assuming I'm going to do the AMC ones. But you were telling me that you were doing some calculations here, and you think it might be
I was
one of two movies.
I was trying to come to a conclusion through science, but I'm not sure that I've settled on a proper result. I might my logic might be flawed. My experiment might need a more controlling factors. So on the AMC website, it says that this movie that they're showing today is PG-13 and the runtime is an hour and 49 minutes. So looking just at a couple upcoming films that are PG-13, there is the new Taika Waititi movie, Next Goal Wins, which is close at an hour 43. So maybe there's like a special 5 minutes behind the scenes tacked on or something like that. I could see that being the look ahead movie. There's also a world in which they're showing the Marvels, which is another PG-13 movie, an hour 45 minutes, a little closer to that hour 49-minute runtime. Although, would Marvel be the kind of company to do these kind of screen? I mean, you're more familiar with.
So you broke up a little bit for me there. I don't know if you could hear me, but I don't think it'd be the Disney movie. That would be the coolest bet. Don't get me wrong. Maybe it's Terrifier 3. I went to go to the theater to go see Radical, and they were giving out these Terrifier 3 posters. Maybe it's a PG-13 version of this because turns out they filmed that movie. They had it ready. But if it's PG-13, I'm going to go Next Go Wins.
Yeah, that feels like a Regal movie, AMC surprise movie kind of movie, right?
Yeah, for sure. Other than that, my fourth pick for this week would be Going to Mars, the Nikki Giovanni story. Last week we went through a bunch of different documentaries that I would recommend for the end of the year, and I think that this was one that should definitely be high up on your radar. It got a lot of praise out of Sundance, a lot of praise from us here on the Intercut podcast, and it's a story going through a poet who kind of builds this whole world, not just from her own backstory, but what she wants the future to be. Very poetic movie, to say the least. And it is out on Limited, coming up now. And then the one that I think we're going to have a double up on is The Holdovers, the newest movie that we covered earlier on. Right after this, we're going to be doing a spoiler discussion, if you've caught it, from Alexander Payne. Zach loved it out of TIFF. I think it was for sure your number one movie out of Toronto.
I still think American Fiction, Origin, those three are hard to choose.
You had your trio. You had your trio. Yeah. But take it away, because I know this was also your pick of the week.
Oh yeah, I mean, The Holdovers. Look, it's a new Alexander Payne movie, as we were talking about earlier. He doesn't do them so often, so it is nice to get a new one of these, especially one with such great performances from such great actors like Giovanni and Randolph. You know, there are so many just like wonderful quotes in this film too. Like because Giamatti is playing this professor, he's like very verbose, and he has all these like very intellectual put downs that I think are so charming in the film. But there's just something very, very winning about it. I'm excited to talk to you about it a little bit more in our discussion after this.
Beautiful.
Elsewhere on my picks for the week, what did I put here? I've got The Killer, because it is playing in theaters right now, but it is available on Netflix starting this Friday. So if you haven't had a chance to catch the latest from David Fincher, it will be available globally not too long from now. I think Art and I were both fans of it. We have another review of that one coming out this week as well, so stay tuned to the channel. And it's just a really sleek, effective hitman thriller from the man who is perhaps best suited to make a cold, cynical movie like that one. So,
yes,
yeah,
sir.
big fan of The Killer. My third pick, though, is a movie that I think is only available in limited release, although maybe this is a good notice to get it on your radar for the upcoming weeks as it starts to expand. Dream Scenario, which we both caught out of Toronto at the Toronto International Film Festival, the latest film from director Christopher Borgley, starring Nicolas Cage as a man who becomes an overnight celebrity after showing up in people's dreams. It's got a really kind of Charlie Kaufman-esque feel, but feels also like a response to viral fame. It's very modern in some ways, but it's also just so imaginative and funny. There's a lot to really like about it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's one of the movies that surprised me the most during our Toronto experience.
Super funny.
Yeah. Then I'll give a quick shout out again to Invincible Season 2, Part 1, since that is available now. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but it's got more of the same kind of brutality and surprise that the first season had. I still am enjoying it. So uh, even though I'm curious where it's going to end up, I'm recommending where it is right now. And then my last pick for the picks for the week is a quick shout out for Doc NYC, one of the best documentary film festivals in the world, because they've got a bunch of selections in person. They've got films like Stamped from the Beginning, at Anselm, which I think you saw in Chicago, American Symphony, which a lot of people are talking about as a potential Oscar frontrunner, The Contestant, which I was very curious about. Jeff saw that one in Toronto. But another thing that's cool about Doc NYC is there's not just the in-person screenings. They're one of the remaining festivals that's still doing virtual selections
Good.
as well. So if you are looking for a chance to catch up with 20 Days in Mariupol, perhaps my favorite documentary of the year, the Sundance Award winner, which is surely going to be in the Oscars discussion, that is available virtually through them. The Disappearance of Sheer Height, which we talked about at Sundance, is available through them. While We Watched, which I thought was a really interesting documentary, sounding documentary out of Toronto that I missed, unfortunately, I'll be catching up with virtually, as well as Smokes on His Sisterhood, one of the really under-loved movies from Sundance this year.
And two of those, if I'm not mistaken, are selections. I know this is the selection for its country,
Yeah,
as well as 20 Days in Mariupol. I think this is
for Ukraine, yeah.
Yeah, and this is the Estonian selection. So
Yes,
that's good. I'm glad.
definitely.
But yeah,
So going back through our picks for the week, the 10-ish movies you should see this weekend. I've
we'll double it up right there because I'm gonna give you Little Woods and Candyman from Nia DaCosta. After you watch the Marvels,
Nice.
if it don't live up to the hype, at least you got you got some good movies to watch from her at home while everyone's got her in the news circuits. Gen V over on Amazon Prime is one of the better superhero stuff that has now wrapped its first season. They said they greenlit the second season already, and it is perfect to watch, especially if you're a big fan of the boys. Especially because they're combining both storylines beautifully. AMC Unseen, which at this point in time, I think I'm gonna be with you. I'm gonna go with Next Go Wins as the big one. That it might be, but I think that this is going to be a very interesting way to be able to hype up a lot of people because the problem with Regal was that people just stopped showing up because they knew there was bound to be a bunch of bunk movies. So AMC, do not ruin it with your unseen. My next one is Going to Mars, the Nikki Giovanni story, one of the best documentaries of the year. So as you're compiling your list, keep an eye out for this one. And then the one we're doubling up, which is The Holdovers, which gets two
Yeah,
thumbs up from us, and a special bonus video right after this live stream.
definitely. So aside from the Holdovers on my list, I've got The Killer, the new movie from David Fincher, a cold hitman thriller with Michael Fassbender.
I'll
Dream
link that for you.
Scenario, a very zany, imaginative comedy about a man who starts showing up in people's dreams, and that man is Nicolas Cage. Invincible season 2. It's back on Amazon and just as brutal as it's always been. And then, of course, a quick recommendation to the Doc NYC Festival, whether you're attending in person for the documentary selection or watching some movies virtually through their virtual selections.
A lot of good stuff. But that's it for this week in movies for the weekend must watch. You can find more from me over at LME Movies on all social medias. Over at Let Me Explain, where we've been working on some recaps. We've been working on some explainers and breakdowns for some of the biggest movies out there. And we got a lot in store, especially with the Thanksgiving season. But Zach, where can people find more from you?
You can find more from me at Zshevich across social media, or you can find my videos at Multiplex Show on TikTok or Instagram, or even here on YouTube, where I uploaded a 20-minute video about Bottoms. So if you, like me, think that's one of the funniest movies of the year, maybe you want to hear more about that. But you can also hear more from both of us right here on Intercut.
A reminder that you can listen to every episode of the Intercut Podcast on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcatcher is. You can catch the live video here on YouTube.com where we go through all of the latest releases, movie news, all that good stuff that you need here on the Weekend Must Watch. Big shout out to all the Intercuties who listen live, all of the patrons who we're going to be talking to right after we do our Holdovers spoiler discussion chat.
Yeah.
And a big thanks to all the iTunes listeners who give us that 5-star review. You help us with the ability to go to festivals, to get some screeners. So we really appreciate you all for supporting the podcast over there. Don't forget to leave us a comment, drop a like, follow the socials over on Intercut Pod, and until next time, make sure you hit that bell. That's a detention.